But you know the reason I'm laughing is because my favorite part of both of those quotes, I love how people came to her defense. Shaq, when Keith Olbermann said, what a fucking idiot, he said, shut your dumb ass up and leave Angel Reese alone. And when Dave Portnoy said, classless piece of shit, he said, and so is your mother.
Oh, God, Shaq. Pew, pew, pew.
Dímelo, mi gente. Welcome to another episode of the Quién, Eres podcast, brought to you by Plural. You already know it's your boy Pavel, bringing you another episode with another very special co-host. We got the homie Samara.
Hello, y'all. What's going on?
Familiar voice. She's the head of partnerships here at Plural, and she's joining me for a conversation about some recent events. And if you heard the clip in the intro, you probably have a good idea of what we're talking about today. Before kicking off the conversation, let me read you off some stats so that y'all have context into the magnitude of what went down the other day. The NCAA Women's National Championship had 9.9 million viewers watching the game. And for context, it's more than any women's college basketball game ever, any Major League Soccer game ever, any Stanley Cup game, which is the championship game for hockey, since 1973, more than the Orange Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, and any Thursday night football game in 2023. And I think the reason for that, why there was so much excitement for this game and why it was so good, is that it was also the highest scoring game in the semi or national final in tournament history. So alongside with LSU's 102 points, Iowa, who lost, scored 85 points. And the two combined for the most points in any D1 national championship game. Now, with all that, did you watch the game?
Well, no. No.
So you don't support women's sports is what you're saying?
I do support women's sports. It's just sports in general. It's not my thing. It's never been my thing. I watch the World Cup because otherwise they'll revoke my Brazilian status. If not, but otherwise I'm not into sports like that. So it's interesting because even though I'm not into sports, I don't follow anything regarding sports. My timelines, all timelines, I'm talking Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn.
Never would have thought.
We're all talking about this. So obviously it piqued my curiosity and I was like, let me do some digging and find out what's going on. But you know what, Pavel, the real question is, how many women's basketball games did you watch?
Oh, flipped it on me. I didn't watch any. But you know what? I also don't watch sports, surprisingly. And it's so funny because I feel like men typically try to bond with me over sports. Like, in my building, if I'm in an elevator, there's one of my neighbors that always either talks about my car, like as if I know anything about my car, or he talks about sports. He's like, oh, the Yankees just played. Did you see the game? And I'm like, nah, I don't. Like, I love basketball. I used to watch and play and all that stuff, but it fell off for me. But just like you, this has been all over my timeline. And I think it has so many ties to what we talk about when it comes to professionalism, where I think it has so many layers to the story worth talking about. So when you saw it on your feed, like, what were some of the things that you saw pop up?
The first thing that I started noticing was, I guess what we'd categorize as her trash talking. And, like, it was just different clips of that and commentary around it. And so that kept, circulating over and over again. And just the comparison between her and the other young lady as well. So
And
And I
you're
guess I'm saying
saying like
her.
Angel Reese
Yes.
versus Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark is who you're referring to.
Yes. Yeah. Let me clarify that. Yeah. So I don't know. When it comes to, I guess, like trash talking, like that is what we're like up in arms about. Like, it seems so mild to me that I'm like, huh, okay, interesting. But that's what originally started coming up in my feed. Do you remember what hit your feed first?
I saw similar things. For me, the most interesting part is kind of like this public criticism of these players, in particular, the criticism towards Angel Reese, because Caitlin Clark essentially did something very similar in sort of this trash talk, which wasn't even like trash talk, it was just like these nonverbal things. And Angel Reese did the same thing, yet she was criticized for it. And it it's interesting too, even thinking about like how old these women are. Like they're college students.
Yeah.
Like they're so young. It just feels so weird for like a grown ass man to be criticizing like a 20-year-old. Be like, do better. I mean, listen, like some of the stuff that people said. Dave Portnoy, head of Barstool Sports, said Angel Reese, classless piece of shit. And then there was another guy, Keith Olbermann, who's been in sports media for a long time. What a fucking idiot. But you know, the reason I'm laughing is because my favorite part of both of those quotes, I love how people came to her defense. Shaq, when Keith Olbermann said, what a fucking idiot, he says, shut your dumb ass up and leave Angel Reese alone. And when Dave Portnoy said, classless piece of shit, he said, and so is your mother.
Oh, God, Shaq. Pew, pew, pew.
He's a LSU alumni, so I think it's on one side like let me defend my alma mater, but also let me defend Angel
Yeah.
Reese, who could look like my daughter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and what's even more interesting about that is like Barstool's suit. What the fuck is it called?
Tell me you know about sports without talking.
Whatever. Barstool. They like. Would we consider them classy? They have a whole segment called "Guess That Ass."
Yeah.
Like, yes, we are going to tea time, like high noon. Like, what do you mean classless? Like, mirror, my friend. And at the same time, I do understand that this is part of the quote unquote trash talking, right? Like fans and spectators making comments on sports. It happens all the time, right? Like any professional sports game, male or, for men or women, fans are always going to come like and talk trash, which to me is like a whole thing that's like super fascinating. This whole like mentality around like what it is to be a sports fan and like agents and alliance behind it, but like that's a different conversation. So it was just interesting that was happening. And I saw one of her press conferences, which is what really caught my attention. And she's like, all year long, y'all have been calling me ghetto and, making fun of me and talking down about me. And like, I am who I am. And, I get the job done. And that's really what stuck out to me because this is her quote unquote job. And essentially, people calling her names and criticizing her are, in a way, calling her unprofessional. But we all know, if you've been watching us for any length of time, that the definition of professionalism is just the skills to be able to get a job done. And clearly, she got the job done. So how is that unprofessional?
And it's interesting, too, when you talk about skills. For so long, trash talking has been seen as a skill. It's been seen as a strategy to get in your opponent's head. Like, you'll say some simple stuff that will, instead of them being focused on the shot or defense or whatever it is, they're thinking about, like, yo, I can't believe he said that to me. Like, how does he know that about me? And that little thing of getting in somebody's head will mess up somebody's performance. So it's interesting, too, how men are like put on a pedestal for their ability to trash talk. It's almost as like it's a skill that is admired. Like there are lists literally of like best trash talkers. You know what I mean? There's like stories where people are celebrated of like, yo, can you believe he said that to him? Yo, that helped him win the game because he missed his shot because he said this, right? Like there was a story about Gary Payton. He's a retired basketball star, Hall of Fame, I believe, but a like amazing basketball player. He said that like he would do research to the point to find out like who your ex was, why y'all broke up, like who died in your family. Like everything was on this, like everything was on the table. He was like, I may apologize to you after, but during the game, I'm gonna win this no matter what. I'm gonna get in your head.
Yeah.
And also like it's not like they was attacking each other.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like it seems, as far as like trash talking, it seems very tame.
Like between men and women, I think there is a difference of like what is accepted in society as well. I mean, the NHL,
100%.
they literally let you fight. Is that classy?
Yeah.
I had to check my own bias at one point back in the day. Like, I don't know if you remember when Bodak Yellow came out. It
Yes.
it was a hit. Everybody. I'm not gonna lie, and I've said this story before on the podcast, but I used to look at Cardi and was like, oh, I can't listen to this music. And my friend was like, bro, don't you listen to French Montana? Like, he literally yells into the mic, huh? And I was like, oh my God, I'm being biased against women. Like, I'm looking down at Cardi B for a certain type of energy that she's putting out there, but I'm like bumping French Montana for the same energy that he's putting out there. I'm like, it's the same thing, yet it's almost like women are not allowed to be a certain way because of like societies. But like I had to check myself.
Yeah. It's not almost, it is.
Yeah.
Time and time again. Like you put two professionals, a man and a woman, who have the same, like qualities and skill sets. And there are certain terms that a man who is, we'll say outspoken and assertive, those are deemed to be good qualities. Meanwhile, you get a woman who exhibits those same qualities, and all of a sudden she's a bitch. Literally, the word bitch is what is used to describe women. And it's frustrating. I mean, I know for myself, like being in sales, it's a male dominated industry. Like pretty much every industry is male dominated. Okay. And
I was like, just sales? What?
Yeah. And it's like we used to have a open office like floor plan and stuff. So you hear one another on the phones and in meetings and this and that. And there is a level of trash talking that happens on the sales floor as well. And we'll have things like spiffs, which are basically little like mini contests to win prizes. And so it's like, how many dials can you get in? With how many meetings can you land? Blah, 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 right? And ironically, for someone who really never played sports, other than tennis, because I like the uniform, but I'm very competitive. And so I, would go. And when I would land a deal, when I'd land a meeting, whatever, like I'd talk about it and I'd celebrate it. And, I'd thump my chest like the dudes. And yet, on multiple occasions, by men and women, I've been called sassy. And that word in particular really, really annoys me.
Yeah. Because
it's like, number one, what does that mean?
Right.
Number two, I'm doing what the guys do. So is he sassy?
Yeah. And also, like, who are you to tell me how I celebrate?
Exactly. And why does it matter to you? Like, I'm getting the job done.
Right.
And furthermore, I'm a nice person. I'm a nice salesperson, and I help my teammates. And like, it's when I look at some of the other reps who are greedy, who are unhelpful. It's like, why? Why are you like this? So being called sassy, I remember one time, literally, I just like my period was about to come, so I was like extra sensitive anyways. But I got called sassy, and I literally went into like the furthest conference room that there was and cried because I'm like, why are they calling me like this? It's like, if these are the things that I do to win and produce results, then me being called sassy makes me think like I should do something different. And if I do something different, who's gonna say that like that's gonna work?
Right.
So
And if you don't start performing, then that's what's really going to come into question. But you're like, you told me to change. I did. Now I'm not doing well. If you want these results, let me be me.
right. So it's that same double standard happening in the workplace all the time.
I could definitely see that being frustrating. I mean, it's happened to me before as well, like being labeled aggressive, yet I responded to the person who originally raised their voice at me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that hurt. In fact, like that moment in the among other moments, but that was one of those moments where I was just like, yo, what am I doing? Like I'm faking it so hard. I'm doing all this work to like fit in so that I'm not labeled these things. Yeah, y'all call me aggressive? Oh fuck it, let me just be myself.
Yeah.
Cause it's a waste of time. Like people are gonna criticize you no matter, people are gonna have this judgment about you no matter what.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the judgment comes down harder on women, and in particular, Black women.
Yeah.
And, there's a book that is on my to read list, but it's I'm Not Yelling. And it literally, the whole premise is about, Black women in the workplace. And it's warranted because at the end of the day, no matter how much progress we've made up until this point, the people who are in power are cis white men. And any behavior that is uncharacteristically, deviated from what you would see a cis white man do is very quickly and easily called out as unprofessional.
Yeah.
And that's just not the case, right? Like we can be ourselves and still be professional. So it's unwarranted.
I mean, we just did an episode a couple episodes ago about Black hair being judged a certain way. And it's like literally how just people look, not talking about performance. Now we're doing an episode on how a Black woman is being criticized for her personality, let's call it. Again, has nothing to do with her output, her work, etc. And it's just like, did y'all see the buckets I was dropping on y'all? Like, how about we talk about my field goal percentage, how I'm breaking records, how I dropped all these points, how I think I might have been like the leading scorer of the game. Well, no, she wasn't the leading scorer, but she was like one of the top scorers of the game. Like, isn't it crazy? It feels like a performance review that we're walking into. Like, literally no one is talking about her performance that gave LSU their first national championship. All we're doing is talking about her personality. This is giving me like anxiety and thinking about like all the performance reviews I've had.
Yeah.
But go for it.
Okay.
Well, I was gonna say, you bring up an interesting point though around the dynamic of like, what does the leadership typically look like, and typically older white men. And I think it brings up this interesting dynamic of like, let's say you do work for Barstool, right? And you got this CEO who's publicly saying classless piece of shit towards this Black woman. I don't got the stats, but I'm assuming mostly Barstool is like mostly white people that work there, right? Well, they have these two Black men, Gilly and Wallow, the heads of the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast, one of the top podcasts out there, popping. Like, and their response to him gave me chills. I want to play it for you in case you haven't heard it.
Okay.
Being coy. Good afternoon. Come on, Dave. Stop it. I got this. I got this. First of all, before we even begin, I just want to establish something. Angela Reese and the whole LSU, Yeah, y'all did your thing. Y'all did congratulations. Congratulations, Angela. You did your thing. Second of all, I want to say something. It's cool that they do it. It's a problem if I do it. A great poet from our culture, Finesse Two-Time, will say that. Let me establish something very important. We talk about sports. We talk about basketball. Sports is a game where trash talk is done. Now, as we can see what took place this weekend, Caitlyn got up. You know, she did her thing, and I'm not here to bash Caitlyn. Now, this win. I'm not here to bash them. She does that, Caitlyn. She the shit. She did her thing. She's the shit. But it wasn't no outrage. It wasn't no upset when she did it. She might got the complexion for the connection, but that's another story. I'm going to say this. Shout out to Angela and Reese. Y'all did a great thing. Y'all did your thing. Congratulations for being the champions. And I'm going to say this. We don't stand with nothing that they important we said in any type, shape, forms, or fashion. We not in agreement with that. We not in alignment with that in any way. And number two, $1 million worth of game, LLC, is owned by two people. One of those people is in Fernando Rossier. We do not work for Barstool. We have a partnership. We have a licensing deal. 100% ownership is by us. We don't have no bosses. I only have one boss, and that's God. And my wife, whenever I get married. But other than that, that's how we rock the with your boss. Then you love it. That's why she do, cuz. That's how I go. You know, people had we got the control of the money. Well, shut up in the end. So, but what I'm saying is, shout out to Angela Reese. You did a great job, young sister. And we not just gonna stand for that. Like Dave, like for her to be a classless piece of shit because of basketball, you're wrong about this shit. And we like it, Dave. We fuck with you, Dave, but we fuck with you. You're totally out of pocket for that. You're wrong for that. For a human being to be a classless piece of shit for sports, where there's nothing with trash talking, they talk, we not doing that. We not gonna do that shit. And we not gonna let you do that to ours. We can't go for that shit. We not gonna be having that. But shout out to Angela Reese, you did your thing. Shout out to everybody that was played the ball in there. All
right. I don't know what part of that clip I'm actually gonna put in there, but that takes a lot of guts. Although they said they have a licensing deal and they don't necessarily work for Barstool Sports.
Yeah.
Barstool, in theory, has the power to be like, you know what? Our relationship here is done. Like, you spoke out in public to the boss. You know what I mean? In some ways, I don't know what to call him, but would you have done that?
I mean, speculation. It's hard to say. I think in terms of the partnership, the licensing deal, I would probably feel more comfortable doing that than if it was like my boss. It's so hard to say. Because what it comes down to is like, can this individual...
Samara, you just started posting on Thing freely. Now you're telling me you would have done a post about Dave Portnoy? Oh no.
No, this is what I'm saying.
Okay.
At the end of the day, this person has a direct impact on your money. Like that's what it comes down to. So if you piss them off and the checks stop coming, then where does that leave you? And so for me personally, it's still hard and uncomfortable to say something where I think that, it's going to mess with my back.
It's terrifying. It's terrifying to, whether it's a private conversation or a public conversation, it is terrifying because on some level, even in a private conversation, there's a Zoom call with 50 other people. It's 49 other people watching you do something that not a lot of people would do. And to do it publicly as well, it's terrifying as well because the numbers just amplify, right? And I don't think a lot of people would do that, would speak up because, and I get why. Like, people have been fired for less.
Oh, yeah.
People have been let go for less. People have been retaliated for less.
Mm-hmm.
People have been labeled for less. So there also comes a crossroad of like, well, what even happens if you continue to work there? Like, this person just said this. Even if I did speak up, now I know where they stand on something.
Yeah.
Now what do I do? Even if I did say something, what do I do? And I think a lot of people are in that position. I mean, whether it's something like sports comes up or like a tragedy happens when like an unarmed black man gets shot and people are like, all lives matter kind of shit. Like, there are so many awkward situations with public discourse where we are put in awkward situations where damn if we do, damn if we don't. But that's what I want people to think about in this episode. Like, what would you have done if you worked at Barstool? If you were Willie, Gilly, and Wallow? You know what I mean? I don't know. And it's one of those, like, yeah, you say you would have done that, right? It's easy to say it. But think deep if you would have done that. Because some of y'all will be like, yeah, I would have done that. But y'all are working at places right now where they're doing some fuck shit. And y'all ain't saying shit. So, what'd you have?
I know. And at the same time, understanding that this comes down to, like, if it's going to mess with your back. And then at what point, right, do you let that slide versus, you know, doing something about it and saying something about it. But also just understanding that time and time again, the demographic that continuously gets overlooked and, quite honestly, shitted on and left unprotected are Black women. And much as there is pressure against it, it's important to have the conversation and to call out, because these public discourses are awkward and are uncomfortable. But if we don't talk about this, then we can't actually highlight what is happening and call attention to it and hold people accountable for it and change behaviors.
Agreed. Mi gente, that wraps up this week's episode of the Quién, Eres podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, please do us a favor, like, share, comment, leave us a rating and review wherever you're listening, because that is how we're going to redefine professionalism. Your engagement and feedback is going to help ensure that these stories and experiences get heard by more people. Thank you, and see you next week.